Hey guys, coming at you from a free state for a change on a little Christmas vacation and visiting a few relatives out of state. And I have had a good opportunity to stop in and check in on my out of state stash. You know, some firearms and magazines that are being held for me pending the SAFE Act being knocked out in court. And I wanted to show you this family heirloom. You've probably heard me mention this rifle, 100 times over the last couple of years. This was the rifle that won me over. This is the gun that turned me into a gun person. This is a Chinese Mak-90 that originally was purchased by my father in literally like 1990, and he held on to it for a long time, and it kind of passed around the family a little bit, and was supposed to come to me after the rotation was complete, and that never ended up happening because of the SAFE Act. So I do have it in safekeeping out of the state. The decision was we didn't want to, being it is a family heirloom, we didn't want to risk anything with it, so we're keeping it safely out of the state until things change. So as I said, Chinese Mak-90. A little history on them. These things were basically the Chinese developed the model 56S, which was their version of the AK47 or AKM rifle. And they produced a model called the 56S, which was a sporter version that it was a semi-automatic that they exported primarily to countries like the United States. And of course, as we know, these Chinese imports were banned. And a lot of confusion about how these things actually got banned happens. A lot of people say they were banned as a result of the assault weapon ban of '94, but that's actually not the case. These were banned in 1990 under President George Bush Sr., which is real interesting. He, after a series of shootings, he was looking into some gun control. So instead of actually passing any legislation, he went on his own and basically had the ATF reclassify what's an assault weapon or not, and in the end the result was that we could not import these Chinese type 56S. So the Chinese, because this is a huge market in America for these weapons, they modified them. So what they did pretty much was they threw a thumbhole stock on it, which is long gone, and the end is not threaded for any muzzle device, and they sold them with like a 5-round magazine, and they did fairly well. Quite a few million were sold here in America, and they're actually fairly well liked. At the time, they were seen as Chinese junk. I remember when we bought this, I went with my father to the gun store, and the guy tried to almost like talk us out of it, like, no, get a Russian one, they're so much better. And at the time they were just seen as garbage, and now they're kind of revered as very, very nice AK platform rifles. So, of course, they're only in production from 1990 to 1994. After then, the assault weapon ban stopped their importation completely until, the end, which was 2004. And by then, we just weren't allowed to import, weapons and ammo from China anyway, so that's that. We'll go through this in a little more detail. This is an AK variant, Chinese style. They were originally sold with a thumb hole stock. I feel like I said butthole earlier. I may have said that. If I did, I don't know why. Must be thinking about politicians. It had a thumb hole stock that matched this handguard here. And what happened was, sometime probably like around 91 or 92, that thumb hole stock actually split, because a lot of these were hand fitted for that thumb hole, and they did a really poor job on it. And plus, I guess the Chinese were doing it in such a hurry, they didn't let the wood dry all the way, and a lot of these things shrunk as they sat around, and the wood shrunk, and the tang in the back caused it to split down the center. So of course, here we are, it's like 1991, 92, whenever, and there's no internet to go hunt down pieces. So, of course, you go around, you're like, hey, I need a Mak-90 stock, and everyone's like, yeah, where am I going to get that? Chinese aren't just going to ship over a stock. So we ended up kind of retrofitting a piece of shit AK stock, very badly I might add. You can see there's a little bit of a gap there where it fits wrong and all that, but we had to do what we had to do because we just, couldn't get it fixed. Because, it was 1991. We just couldn't go online and order parts. And, in this part of New York, there just wasn't a lot of gun shops who were capable of getting that kind of part. So, moving up to the receiver, these are interesting in that they have a 1.5 millimeter stamped receiver. Some of them were milled, but this one here is stamped. But the traditional Russian ones were 1 millimeter, so these things are actually a little bit thicker. And one other thing to note is that with the Mak-90, some of them had a slanted rear cut, which is the very end here had a slant, which makes them pretty much impossible to find a replacement stock for them. Luckily, this one here is straight cut, so you can put on an AK stock if you're willing to do some fitting. So we have the thicker receiver. All the internals are pretty much identical. I don't think there's anything different about them. Handguards are slightly different as well. You can't just interchange the handguards, and that's because it also has a thicker barrel. It has a slightly thicker barrel than what you get on your standard AK, so you can't just swap out a handguard without some special fitting. Same goes with the gas tube. I guess the gas tube is a kind of an unusual length as well. In the end, these are not threaded for a muzzle device, but you're going to hear a lot of people say, oh, it's threaded, because there are some grooves on the very end of this, but they're not threads. They're actually just machine marks. They just never finished it very well. These things, like I said, these things were kind of slapped together in a hurry to sell. So a lot of these you're going to see are going to have grooves on the end, but they're not, in fact, threaded. They're just grooves from the manufacturing process that they never bothered to smooth out. Okay, where are we? Some of them can be threaded. Some of them have enough material. Some have been turned down. They put them on a lathe and took some of the material off so they can't be threaded. Some can, some can't. A lot of information on the internet about that. We never bothered to do it because at the time we just didn't have the know-how. And if this thing ever comes back to New York and laws change, we're gonna do some serious work on this thing. Okay, so these things had the thicker receiver, thicker barrel. The triggers on these things are like butter. Absolutely smooth. Smoothest AK trigger you're ever going to get. Probably 2.5, maybe 3 pounds. Just fantastic trigger. I don't know what the Chinese were thinking, but man, they put some good triggers in these things. Super reliable. These things are great. Accurate. There's a little better accuracy because of the thicker barrel, I think, and the lighter trigger, so I think you really get a lot of good accuracy out of these when you're shooting from a bench. They're just fantastic. They were really overlooked at the time, and they were seen as just Chinese garbage, and a lot of people bought them, and these things were like, when we bought this, it was like $279, but back in the day, you could get them for like $199, which is insane, but we paid like $279, and nowadays, these things sell for $500-600 easy, which is kind of crazy. It is a little more difficult because it is difficult finding a stock for it, and it is difficult finding things that fit it, but they're AKs. They're meant to be dirty. They're meant to have mismatched parts. I think it kind of adds to the character of this that it has the mismatched furniture, but that's what it is. This is a family heirloom, and hopefully one day if the laws change, it'll get to come back home and see some modifications. But for now, I just wanted to show it to you guys. I've talked about it a million times over the years, and this is it. This is the family heirloom, and I'll be heading back to New York tomorrow morning, and hopefully get out tonight and do a little shooting with this bad boy. Because I actually have not shot this thing since probably 2007, maybe 2008, so it's been quite a few years. So I'd definitely like to put a couple hundred through her and see how she does, because it has been a while, and I do need to strip her down and clean her real good. My relative, unfortunately, has not taken the best care of her. There are a couple spots of surface rust, so we got to have a long chat about that, and just wanted to show you this bad boy because, You know, I've talked about it so much, and you know, the whole thing makes me sad. You know, the laws here are dumb, and hopefully one day this can come home.